Hi, everybody.
Hello, I'm Ryan.
I'm Bethany.
And we are Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews.
And today we have a top 10 for you. We have our top 10 good games that have a long setup time.
So this is games that we like, games that we would play. But for whatever reason, the setup takes a long time, or the teardown takes a long time. And makes it so that we would have played these games, but because of how long the setup or teardown is, we don't play them.
Yeah.
We don't play them nearly as much as we would have otherwise. So yes, there's some great games on this list, but yeah, let's go through this.
There are some caveats we wanted to talk about before we did, though.
Yes.
There are games out there that we just don't play. Like, we don't play war games, and we understand that there's a lot involved with that.
Yeah, if you're playing like the campaign for North Africa or some one of those crazy long war games, obviously that's a major setup. That's not the style of games that we're familiar with. That's the style of games that we play a whole lot of, and so we just wanted to talk about those kinds of games that we are most familiar with. That for our experiences. Per how long the game is, make the game length, the setup length, an issue.
It's a deterrent from us being able to play it.
Right.
All right, so
whereas the war games themselves are a deterrent, not the setup or the teardown.
Have you ever played a war game?
Probably not what like a war game would call a war game.
I don't think I have.
I played like games like Memoir 44 and things like that, but I wouldn't have to.
What is like the shortest war game that you would recommend? Put it in the comments below. I'm really curious now. So let's kick this off. I'm going to kick it off with our number 10, and this is Castles of Mad King Ludwig. This is a game that we actually really enjoy. We especially love the blending between two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. But between our Castles of Mad King Ludwig just has a lot of different tiles, which isn't that bad, but you have to like sort them out depending on the player count, and then you have to shuffle those for all of these different sizes. And it's not all the same across the board, so it's not like you get like 4 out of each when you're playing this. It's different based on the size, based on the player. So that's just like, ugh. It's just really annoying. And it's not that big of a thing, which is why it's 10. But that is a reason why we've decided not to play it. And
the expansion adds even more setup chaos to the mix.
Yes.
And it's actually one of the few games that we actually say don't add the expansion to it.
Don't add the expansion.
It adds less fun for more setup.
Yes.
All right, going into number 9. This is a game called Far Away. This is a 2-player only game where you are space explorers. You are going to this faraway planet, thus the name of the game, and you are exploring. And they were extremely thorough with how they designed this game and all the different backgrounds. As you go to this mysterious planet, there are just a ton of different life forms that you might come across. And there's different carnivores and herbivores and omnivores and all these different things. And they're all represented by a whole bunch of tokens and a whole bunch of cards. And there's all these cubes that represent all these different resources. There's probably hundreds of cubes. There's hundreds of tokens. This whole box is just a brick. There's just so
It is. It's like
really I don't know, like a 10-pound game, but it's like in a regular sized box. There's just so much crammed into this box. Which makes it extremely thorough. It makes it so there's just so much variability in things that you might come across. However, that also means that you have to sort all that every time, and you have to prepare it every time, and there's just an unbelievable amount of components. It is definitely a game killer.
Our number 8 is Sorcerer City. Now, this is a really unique game, and if you haven't got a chance to play it, I would definitely try to get to play this. It is a deck builder tile laying game. So you're actually like drafting tiles and then shuffling them and playing the tiles, and it's real time. It's just, I feel like this is a very unique game, and that if you haven't gotten a chance to play it, you should definitely check it out. The thing that gets us with this game isn't so much the setup, even though that can be a little annoying when you're creating the market and stuff like that, but that happens in any type of, deck builder game like that. It's actually more so the tear down that can get a little frustrating, because there's these 3 different decks that you're buying from, and then there's these different monsters, and especially if you start with the special player tiles and taking all of that out at the end, like
sort of back out.
Yes,
there's hundreds of tiles.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the games to where I actually don't help tear down this game. And that's not because I'm not helpful. It's because when it's a game like that, Ryan likes to be able to have handled all the pieces, because then he feels better about putting the game away.
It's so weird. I have to count every single grouping and make sure that we didn't misgroup anything, and it's a thing.
Sometimes, like, when people are over and we're playing games, I feel like they think I'm being rude, but really I'm, like, doing Ryan a service.
All right, so our number 7, this is the Downfall of Pompeii. This is obviously about the volcano that erupts, right? But this game is kind of unique, and there's 2 very distinct halves to it, right? The first half of the game is all about kind of preparing things, getting things all ready, and the second half of the game is just with the volcano exploding, just running away and escaping. But because of that, there's a very clear timer in the game, which is this deck of cards. And you have to kind of create the deck of cards, splice in things at very specific increments. So you are building this deck, essentially, that is, every, third turn you're going to experience this kind of event, and then at this halfway point, this other stuff's going to happen, and you just have to completely build this entire deck of cards before the game starts, so that everything happens in the order and in the timing that it's supposed to, which is a really, really cool mechanism when you're playing the game, but setting it up is very annoying and very frustrating, and it takes away the magic of the timing of it all. So if you go to play this at a convention and someone already has it set up, perfect. You get to enjoy it.
Can I sit in on this game?
But having to do it yourself, again, it takes away the magic of when all that happens. But it's a very interesting setup.
So our number 6 is actually really similar as to why it's on the list, and that is Fog of Love. And in this, it's a role-playing board game where you are a couple and you're trying to achieve different goals. So there's a chance where you both can win or you both can lose, or one person can win and one person can lose. But there's all these different chapters in your love story and how you have to set that up and how you have to play the cards, and you have to play X amount of cards. And you have to just keep track of it, and it's just for me, it's totally not worth it. Side note, if you check our review of this, I just don't like this game. But but the setup of it was just a little bit tedious for me, and especially when you add expansions in on that, and you have to there's almost a campaign style thing that happens in it. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That will just add to the setup and bookkeeping of it, and it's just kind of no.
All right, so number 5, this is Campaign Trail. This is a game that is a simulation of the United States' electoral college, how we elect our presidents. And it's a crazy system just by itself, right? But if you have a crazy system and you're simulating that, it's going to be a crazy simulation. So you have these 50 states, this huge board representing the entire map of the United States, and you have all these different tokens that you're laying out there representing all these different voters and the influence that you have in these areas. And you also have all these different values that are things that you're going to basically be having debates over the course of the game, and each state has a different thing that it has values in, and you also on top of that have all the different electoral votes themselves. You have these actually physical bars, the length of the bar representing how big the electoral votes are. So California obviously has a really, really big one, whereas Iowa has a much, much smaller one, because we have a smaller electoral votes for our population. But whenever you are able to turn over a state, let's say we have a state like, say, Pennsylvania, it was going towards the one party, and now you switched it over because you were able to add enough voters into your party, and now you have to actually physically pick up the piece, put it onto the different track. And you have to organize that entire huge track before the game even starts, before you can get going, based off of the setup of the game. And each number of player counts is different, so even on top of that, based off of, you can't just have memorized how to set up the game.
Yeah.
You have to keep on referencing the rule book over and over again as you're setting it up. It is super tedious. It's a long game, though, and once you get going, it completely makes sense. But that setup, it's a doozy.
Once again, we're just piggybacking off of each other, and our number 4 is our number 4 for the exact same reason, and that is Bora Bora. There's just so many tiles in this game. So you're on an island, and you're just trying to basically create the best island life. You are trying to fish well. You're trying to, appease your gods and essentially get the most prestige. This is a Feld game, so it's just you get a little bit of points doing a lot of bit of everything, and all those little bit of points and a lot of bit of everything you all have to set up before the game, and all I can think about is all the fish, Ryan. You just set up all those fish and all the little islands. But all the little tiles that you have to set up in all little places. Oh my god.
Yeah, tons and tons of tiles. You have to shuffle them all.
It's going to take 10 minutes for Ryan to set up, just for Ryan to take 45 minutes to demolish me.
It is a glorious 45 minutes.
You're just really good at this game.
I love it.
Yep.
All right, so number 3, this is The Colonist. Man, this is such a cool game, and it's a long one, too. This actually has rules that say, okay, if you can't finish the game, finish at this point. Here's the stopping point if you can't get all the way to the end.
Yeah, we know what we are.
Which is just hilarious. If you have that rule in the game, it's looking you're in for a long haul. But it's every minute of it is enjoyable because you have to start off with a small map, and it's kind of a worker placement game. Wherever you move around on the map, you do that action. But you keep on adding more and more and more tiles. So by the end of the game, you have this huge map, each one representing a unique action that you can take if you can land on it. And a lot of those things are building buildings, gathering resources, turning those resources into things, cultivating more things. Just every action is different. But each one of those actions requires its own set of tiles. And all the tiles kind of come out in certain ages. All the buildings that you can build come out in certain different ages. And there's just so many different tiles, so many different resources. Even with a really fantastic storage solution, you're still looking at a really long setup to make sure that it all comes out and it's all laid out properly. Everything is mixed out. So that way when you're actually playing the game, it goes a lot smoother. Because if you don't sort it out ahead of time, then it kind of interrupts the flow of the game. So you really want to have that all done ahead of time. But again, that just means you got a half an hour setup before you play this 4 to 5 hour long game, and then another half hour tear down.
Our number 2. Okay, our number 2 is kind of a caveat. So it's 7 Wonders with all the expansions. So it's not just like 7 Wonders, because that's really like not difficult to set up whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a pain to shuffling out the different number of player counts, but other than that, that's all there is.
But when you have 7 Wonders with all the expansions, and you're like dealing out the Babel tiles, and you're dealing out the black cards and the purple cards and
the white leader cards.
And the white leader cards, and then the player count, depending on how those are, to get that all shuffled in together, and to have the first age, and then the second age, and the third age, and then putting that all away when you're done, and having all that stuff that you just got out, having to take out to do that, and it's just like,
and you need a whole bunch of different rule books to explain all the iconography too. That's more in-game, but still, I always associate that.
It's actually really funny when you play the game. The last time we played was actually a fantastic experience. I always have... We should do did we do a top 10 list where, like, we always come away with a great story? Like, this is on.
That would be a great
great
list.
Ryan's, like, looking for a pad of paper. Like,
write this down.
Yeah, but this is definitely one of them. It just always happens, but yes, it can be kind of a beast to set up and to tear down, at least to tear down properly.
Yes. All right, well, before we get to our number 1, I wanted to go over an honorable mention. So, out of the box, Dominion isn't that bad, really. It kind of has this nice little insert where you've got the 25 Kingdom cards, or more if you have the second edition, and you kind of just pick out 10 of them, and you're playing, and then when you're done, you put them away in the little filing system. So by itself, not a bad setup. But the more expansions you get, and this game can be very addictive, right? The more combos you're looking for, the more experiences and more interactions you are looking for, you're going to get more and more expansions. And then you don't want to just play with just this expansion or just this expansion. The whole point of that is you want to see how... you want to see how this card from this expansion interacts with this card from this expansion. And then you want to see how these two interact with cards from this you have all these different cards you're pulling from all these different expansion boxes, and now you've got a mess. You've got 10 boxes all over the table, and you're plucking out 1 or 2 from each one, and it gets to be a ton of chaos. The reason it's not actually on our list is we have created a pretty cool little kind of filing storage system that works out really well for us. So when we're putting away and getting out cards, it is much more streamlined than it used to be originally when we were just digging the cards out of the boxes. Yeah. So as it is, this probably would have made the list, but because of our storage solution, it's off the list. But it makes me bring up a topic of, in general, of great inserts. A great insert could overcome so much of this.
Before you get to the great inserts, I just want to say, so like the Dominion boxes, what were there, like 6 boxes? They would have taken up 2 cells. And now they just take up 1 cell.
Half of one.
We still have all the boxes. We still have all of them. Brian won't get rid of them. They're just like sitting under in storage.
It's fine.
So like, I created this solution, but guess what? We're still going to keep them.
What's the solution for the gameplay, maybe? Not necessarily for overall storage.
It is a great solution for the gameplay, but I just think that's so funny that, like, I did this great, because Ryan did it. He says we because he's kind like that, and he's bringing me a part of it. But he was the one that did this whole project, and it did save a lot of space, and it was wonderful, but we still have all those boxes.
Yeah, so... kind of the overall topic of the honorable mention is a great insert can really, overcome a whole lot of these issues. So like a game like Kanban EV, where there's just just a ton of tiles.
Yeah.
It solved that by having the tiles be different sizes, so that way you kind of were able to differentiate what this tile does from this tile, and then on top of that, the insert sorted them all for you. So that way you just get out this chunk, shuffle it, and you're done. Get out this chunk, you shuffle it, and you're done. Or like Fossilis is another one where you have just so many little bits, and they all have to go kind of shuffled in this certain way inside the tray. But because of the way it was designed and organized, it just kind of just happened, and you'd even notice how bad it could have been if they hadn't have come up with a clever way to make that happen.
It was very innovative. They did a fantastic job with both of those.
Yeah, so great inserts and great storage solutions can really overcome things. That's why Dominion is our honorable mention. Out of the box with expansions can be a mess. With a storage solution, it's all right.
All right, we're here. We've arrived. We're finally at our number one. So our number one is a game that is the reason why we made this list. We've talked about doing this list for a while, and it's because we want to talk about this game specifically on this list. This was the first game that for us we ever had to schedule a day to play it. You know, when we were first in our gaming career, we just had people over and just play whatever. But this is a game that eventually we're like, we just can't just get it out. We have to like plan ahead for it. And that is Firefly the game. Even though this game is wonderful and I love it and it's great and it takes up so much space, but there's just so many cards. Oh, so many cards. We'd have to set up a separate table just for the cards.
Yeah, there's like something like 6 or 7 different contacts that you deal with, and they have a deck plus a discard pile.
Yes.
And then there's like, I want to say 6 or 7 different places that you can go to buy equipment, and you have to have a deck and a discard pile for all of those.
Yeah.
And then you have bounty cards that you add in, and then you have all the different, your own kit, things that you have, and then you have all the different ships, and they have their own equipments.
Yeah.
So there's this big sprawling all over the board, tons and tons of decks of cards, so many tokens. You have to have, oh gosh, just a million different tokens, and I'm not even exaggerating. Obviously I am. Never mind. I am exaggerating, but hundreds of tokens, not exaggerating.
One of the things that has actually really helped with this game is we have these E-Raptor card holders. Is that what they're called?
Well, yeah, E-Raptor's the company that makes these really nice kind of stackable card trays.
Yes.
So that way, instead of taking up one spot, it takes up, or instead of taking 3 decks of cards, having them stacked, it makes it so it basically takes the amount of one stack.
It's actually really, really, really nice, and it actually makes the gameplay, not the setup's still the same amount, but the gameplay is a ton smoother, and it actually takes up less space. So last time we played, we didn't have to set up an extra table. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but
it was
still
great. Yes.
It is so many components, so much setup, so much shuffling before the game can even start.
Yes, a lot of setup and a lot of tear down, but
the payoff is there. It's a lot of fun. You just have to set aside a big block of time for it.
Yeah, you have to plan it. You can't just like willy-nilly grab it off the shelf. But who cares about any of this? We want to know, what's your game? What's a game that's in your collection that you really love, you're not going to get rid of, but sometimes when you think about having to set it up, or even sometimes thinking about tearing it down, you're just like, maybe a different game right now. We want to know. Let us know in the comments below.
You guys, thanks so much for watching it, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.